In the headlines, President Park Geun-hye resends request for parliamentary approval for 2 cabinet nominees while withdrawing a 3rd nominee accused of plagiarism. South Korea sets up a committee aimed at getting ready for a unified Korea amid tensions over Pyongyang's recent missile launches. And Israel accepts an Egyptian ceasefire proposal, but Hamas doesn't appear to be honoring the truce, firing more than 20 rockets into Israel after the deadline.
Hello and welcome to Primetime News.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thanks for joining us. President Park Geun-hye has been under pressure from the opposition party to withdraw some of her cabinet nominations, and today she decided to drop one of them.
Kim Myung-soo is out as education minister nominee on charges of plagiarism. President Park did meanwhile ask the parliament to reconsider the 2 other nominees still in limbo. Our Choi You-sun has more.
President Park's spokesperson Min Kyung-wook on Tuesday said the president had withdrawn Kim Myung-soo's nomination for education minister and 2nd deputy prime minister after he was grilled by parliament over allegations of thesis plagiarism. President Park quickly named 5-term ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker and former party leader Hwang Woo-yea as the new nominee for that post. Hwang's expertise in the field from his time as the chair of the Parliamentary Education Committee and his abilities as a mediator were highly noted. Selecting her political aide and a prominent figure within the party is thought to be a part of President Park's strategic move to expand her authority over state affairs. Hwang has also worked closely with Choi You-sun, who's been tapped as the finance minister and first deputy. Choi was the floor leader when Hwang headed the party. As for the 2 other cabinet nominees that remain unconfirmed over allegations of perjury and real estate speculation, the president requested that the parliament reconsider them. While midnight Tuesday is the deadline, the president is widely expected to appoint 7 of the 8 new cabinet ministers without parliamentary approval on Wednesday. Meeting with the ruling party's new leader Kim Myung-soo earlier Tuesday, President Park stressed the need for a new cabinet and the party leadership to cooperate on a series of bills related to the economy and another that came about in the aftermath of April's ferry tragedy. On Tuesday, the president also named a safety management expert as her new vice security minister and an administrative veteran as her new senior presidential secretary for personnel affairs. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
The ruling Saenuri Party on Monday chose a 5-term lawmaker, Kim Myung-soo, to lead the Conservative Party for the next 2 years. And it looks like it will be a different 2 years than the previous ones, as a new party leader has signaled to take a different approach when it comes to the party's relations with the President Park Geun-hye and her administration. Kim Myung-soo reports on the expected changes.
5-term lawmaker Kim Myung-soo, who represents the non-mainstream faction of the party, secured a comfortable win over pro-Park Geun-hye heavyweight Seo Chung-won at the Saenuri Party convention on Monday. With Kim now in charge, the ruling party's relationship with the presidential house of Cheongwa-dae is expected to undergo significant changes. The newly elected leader promised to establish a relationship of healthy tension between the party and the president, and to speak out against President Park Geun-hye's administration when necessary, while at the same time vowing to help out the president in her drive for reforms.
As I mentioned in my acceptance speech, we are in the same boat. We share a common destiny, and together we will meet any difficulties we face. With that in mind, I will do my best to support the president.
He's also signaled he would reach across the aisle to the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which favored Kim in the Saenuri Party leadership race due to his relative independence from the president's influence. All are challenges Kim faces over the next couple of years, but his most immediate one will be preparing his party for by-elections in just 2 weeks' time, in which 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs. Kim Myung-soo, Arirang News.
After starting off the year with a bang, momentum for concrete steps towards unification of the Korean Peninsula lost steam to April's ferry disaster. But on this Tuesday, President Park Geun-hye moved forward with the lineup for a preparatory committee that will set the groundwork for an eventual unified Korea. Kim Ji-yeon has the details on who will make up the committee and what they will be doing.
The 50-member Joint Government Civilian Committee chaired by President Park has been tasked with seeking ways to systematically prepare for Korean reunification and setting a direction for the unprecedented process. Two vice chairs have been named: Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae, representing the government, and former senior presidential foreign secretary Chung Jong-woo, who is currently the chair professor at Incheon National University, representing the civilian side. 29 civilian members with backgrounds related to reunification issues will then be divided into 4 subcommittees, according to their fields of expertise: foreign affairs and security, the economy, society and culture, and politics and law. They will be joined by another group of specialized advisors for in-depth discussions and research, with an ultimate goal of formulating a blueprint for a unified Korea. On the government side, the unification minister will be joined by 10 members, including the ministers of finance, foreign affairs and defense, as well as the senior presidential foreign secretary. As President Park had proposed during talks with the floor leaders of the ruling and opposition parties last week, the policy chiefs of both parties have been named as the 2 members representing parliament. 6 members from state-run research institutes have been tasked with boosting cooperation between the government and civilian sector. While not included in the 50-member list, the presidential office said advisors from civic groups, the media, and educational community will be asked to meet with the committee on a regular basis to offer their views on reunification. The committee will convene for the first time in early August to decide on its goals and direction. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And staying with North Korea to talk more about the inter-Korean relations in depth and to get an expert's perspective, Sean King, Vice President of Park Strategies, is joining us tonight.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining us today. North Korea says it's sending athletes and cheering squad for Asian Games to South Korea while provoking the South with missiles and artilleries. And the South is talking about aid for North Korea, like we just saw in this report. What's going on here? What's with North Korea's mixed signals?
This is classic North Korea good cop, bad cop strategy, sweetening up on one side while threatening to submission on the other. Also, for domestic propaganda purposes, it has to tell its people that it's standing up for real Korea against foreign invaders. So it wants to be seen shooting these missiles and artillery while there are U.S.-South Korean joint naval drills going on in the South. And lastly, North Korea earns a lot of hard currency by selling these missiles abroad, so it has to show its customers they work every once in a while. So these missile tests provide a commercial purpose as well.
We've been seeing an interesting game being played out in Northeast Asia, with Japan cozying up with North Korea while leaders of South Korea and China are holding summits. Do you give any special meaning to these new pairings?
Not really. Japan may be cozying up, but it's holding its nose while it does so, because it's doing it only because it has to get back its abductees, which is a very emotive issue. And North Korea says it's going to investigate the abductions as if it doesn't know what happened to them. They're just going to string this out to get as many concessions from Japan as possible. And I doubt they'll give them all back, because then they would have no leverage left over Japan. The China-South Korea summit, that's nothing new. They've been allies, or not allies, but at least diplomatic partners for a long time now. The thing is, I think South Korea wanted to play that card as an anti-Japan play, and also to let Washington know it can't take it for granted in its Asia policy. Meanwhile, China, again, the anti-Japan play, but also trying to pry South Korea away from the United States. I don't think it's going to work, but I don't think that summit had anything to do with North Korea per se.
So how do we engage with North Korea differently from here on? I mean, there seem to be different opinions about bringing North Korea back to the negotiating table of the 6-party nuclear talks. Do you think that we can resume this framework? And if so, what will be some of the prerequisites for that scenario?
I don't. I think the 6-party talks are a farce. Really, it's extortion by committee. It allows North Korea to continue its weapons program, all the while extracting concessions from other countries. Meanwhile, China gets to play kingmaker while really doing nothing. I don't think there's any way to engage with North Korea. I think you can't. The real thing is China has to let it go and let it collapse under its own weight. Until then, we're going to be in the same position 10, 20 years from now. North Korea is not here to reform. It can't. The Kim family has to find some way to stay in power. Their only goal is to suppress their own people and extract concessions from the outside to run out the clock so they can live their lavish lifestyle. Until China decides to let them go and cut them off, we're not going to make any progress. So I think the six-party talks are a waste of time, and they are dead.
Well, today, activists in South Korea launched more balloons with leaflets and dollar bills across the border. How do you feel about calls that the six-party talks are dead and that we should try to engage North Korean civil society from within to work towards reforms?
Well, it's very difficult to engage North Korea society from within when you can't talk to them because the people aren't free to travel or speak to foreigners when they visit. But the more information we can send over the border, the more leaflets, the more money, anything that can remind North Koreans that there is a world outside, tell them what's really going on in their own country, the more power to them. If I were there at the border, I'd send the leaflets over myself.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sean King there from Park Strategies. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.
Curry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Che-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Korea lobbed strong criticism at Tokyo on Tuesday for the recent visit by 5 Japanese ministers to the highly controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. During a press briefing on Tuesday, Foreign Ministry spokesperson No Kwang-il said that the act was a direct challenge to Japan's neighbors that had suffered at the hands of their past militarism. The 5 Japanese cabinet members dedicated paper lanterns on Sunday at the Yasukuni Shrine, which commemorates Japanese war dead, including several Class A war criminals from World War II. A new economic team under President Park Geun-hye is set to launch tomorrow. They'll have a full plate at a time when the nation is suffering from sluggish domestic consumption and low growth. But their first attempt at a silver bullet may come in the form of easing household loans. Hwang Woo-yea reports on the plan to prop up the economy.
Korea's new economic team, which will be led by incoming Finance Minister Choi You-sun, has one goal: to spur growth. To achieve it, the team is expected to first fiddle with the nation's real estate market. Officials at the Finance Ministry say a set of economic policies for the second half of this year is expected to include measures like easing loan-to-value ratio limits for mortgage lending to 70%. That means homebuyers would be able to borrow up to $140,000 when buying a house worth $200,000. The current loan-to-value ratio stands at 50% for those living in the nation's capital area, which allows them to borrow just $100,000 when purchasing the same house. Homebuyers who are short of cash typically are forced to borrow money from non-banking financial institutions that charge them higher interest rates. Economic policymakers expect people moving their loans from non-banking lenders to banks to spend more, which would also lead to pulling the country out of its sluggish domestic demand trap. While many are concerned that easing housing loan regulations could lead to more household debt, which already hovers around $980 billion, the nation's real estate market is welcoming the government's expected move.
Easing regulations won't really lead to more household debt because there aren't a lot of speculative investments in the real estate market these days.
Economists still add that the government should also set up countermeasures to address the side effects that could occur from easing housing loan regulations. Hwang Woo-yea, Arirang News.
And on the cultural front, a new photo exhibition opened this Tuesday in Seoul. It features the works of American photographer Jordan Matter, who first gained worldwide recognition for his project called Dancers Among Us. He is premiering more than 60 new images in Korea, and our Park Ji-won sat down with him to find out what inspires him.
It's all about the joy and passion of being alive. None of these images have been digitally modified, and the dancers and the photos aren't relying on the help of wires or trampolines to enhance their jumps. Photographer Jordan Matter's works aim to reflect the beauty and wonders of everyday life, capturing what he calls that one magical moment.
You go through this series of events every single day that we just pass through without any sort of like recognition of their beauty and of the specialness of them. The magical moments means to me, stack all of the moments of your life up together and make each one as magical as possible.
First inspired by his 3-year-old son, who was living a life full of joy and full of wonder in the moment, Matter came up with the idea of taking pictures through the eyes of a child. He thought dancers would best represent the beauty of each passing moment.
They embody this kind of beauty and this emotion, and they're able to physicalize that and show us a story. And so it made perfect sense if I wanted to create and almost make the ordinary extraordinary in a way, and show everyday moments, but make them more extreme and more beautiful.
His works have touched the hearts of many, and his book, Dancers Among Us, made the New York Times bestseller list. He says for the best results, he always lets spontaneous moments happen.
All of it is serendipity. All of it is luck. If you can try to allow life to happen and then to react to it, as opposed to trying to hold on so tightly and control it, if you can let go of control a bit, then you will be very happy to see all of the surprises that await you.
During his stay in Korea, he will collaborate with Korean dancers and Taekwondo martial artists to capture more magical images that represent the wonders of life. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Israel has resumed airstrikes in the Gaza Strip just hours after accepting a ceasefire proposal to halt its military offensive against the Hamas.
With more on that story, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, what triggered the breakdown in the peace?
Well, the Israeli military says it carried out aerial assaults on 2 targets in Gaza after Hamas militants allegedly violated the ceasefire brokered by Egypt. The military accused Hamas of firing some 50 rockets all over Israel for 6 hours after Tel Aviv unilaterally agreed to the truce. The Egyptian-led peace deal was aimed at de-escalating the cross-border hostilities in Gaza and called for high-level Israeli and Hamas delegations to meet in Cairo to begin negotiations. An agreement is now unlikely, with Hamas leaders calling for an end to Israel's blockade of Gaza and the release of hundreds of its members.
We will not stop the fighting before they accept all the conditions of the Palestinian resistance. The announcement by the Israeli occupation to end the fighting from one side does not mean anything for Hamas. What is requested is not to end the fighting, but to end the injustice on the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Palestinian health officials say over 190 people, many of them civilians, have been killed and more than 1,400 wounded during the week-long conflict. And turning now to Russia, where a deadly subway crash has killed at least 20 people and injured more than 100 others. It's being described as the most serious accident to hit one of the world's oldest underground railways. The incident occurred when a crowded subway train went off the rails on the Moscow metro during the morning hours of Tuesday. The Russian health ministry says at least 200 passengers were evacuated, while some 50 people were airlifted to nearby hospitals. Russian news agencies report that rescue teams were working to free about 5 people who were still trapped inside the train. A spokesman for the emergencies ministry said a power surge had caused the train to stall and eventually derail 3 cars between 2 stations. Authorities say there are no signs of foul play, and they are speaking to metro officials to determine the exact cause of the accident. And finally, the operator of the popular messaging service Line has reportedly taken the first step towards going public on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. The initial public offering for the Japanese firm is estimated to be valued at nearly $10 billion on the country's stock exchange. According to Reuters, an inside source said the company applied for the IPO 2 weeks ago and hired Nomura Holdings and Morgan Stanley to manage the filing. Line, which is owned by Korean internet search giant Naver, is also reportedly considering listing on the New York Stock Exchange. The move comes as the messaging app has rapidly expanded overseas in Asia and America, with the company boasting over 480 million in global downloads. Line and Naver, meanwhile, have declined to comment on the upcoming deal. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. World Cup champions Germany arrived home to a hero's welcome with thousands of their fellow countrymen and fans celebrating the team's spectacular efforts in Brazil. They landed at Berlin's Tegel Airport early Tuesday local time, with Captain Philipp Lahm the first to emerge from the plane with the World Cup trophy in hand. And after a quick photo op with the press, they hopped aboard a bus for Brandenburg Gate to celebrate their victory with the 400,000 fans waiting there. And the win in Brazil was significant because it was Germany's first World Cup title as a unified nation. It won 3 times before, the latest in 1990 as West Germany. And staying with football but closer to home, the Korea Football Association has spoken against rumors of a Korea-Japan friendly match later this year. Several Japanese sports outlets reported that the two rivals would play in an exhibition match in September or October. Well, the KFA responded, saying that while there were previous talks for a possible meeting, there's nothing scheduled this year. They haven't played since 2012, partly due to the nation's differences in regional politics. And heading to the majors, Oakland Athletics slugger Yoenis Cespedes put on a hit parade as he took home the MLB All-Star Game Home Run Derby crown once again this year. He successfully defended his Home Run Derby title after beating out the Cincinnati Reds' Todd Frazier 9 homers to 1 in the finals, and hitting a total of 28 long balls over 4 rounds. And with that, he joins Ken Griffey Jr. as the only other player to win the Derby 2 years in a row. And ending off with Tuesday's KBO action. 2 games were rained out, but 2 were also in action. Let's get to the Samsung Lions taking on the LG Twins. Now, LG gets started in the 2nd inning. Bases loaded, Choi You-sun walks, a run comes home, then another walk for another score. It's eventually 3-0 Twins. Now 4th inning, they added 1 more run. Son Ju-in comes home on a sac fly. Then 8th inning, Samsung, or rather 6th inning, Samsung responds as Park Seok-min hits a solo shot. It's 4-1 LG still, but LG adds a couple more runs in the 8th, and they go on to win 7-1. And looking at the other game, we have Hanwha defeating SK 8-3. Meanwhile, Tusan NC and Nexon Lotte's games were rained out. Well, that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. Join me later for more from the world of sports.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your latest weather update. At the moment, some regions down south are seeing heavy rainfall, and the rain will continue to fall through Thursday, dropping about 30 to 80 millimeters on Jeju, and a heavy rainfall watch has been issued for the mountainous areas of Jeju, which could get over 150 millimeters, and other parts of the southern coast can expect 20 to 60. All of this is due to influence of monsoonal front, which is making its way up, and monsoonal front should gradually make its way up to the central regions on Friday, sprinkling some rain. But before then, hot and sunny weather is forecast here, so make sure to keep yourselves hydrated. Taking a look at Wednesday's readings, Seoul soars to a hot 32, while rainy Daegu and Gwangju hit 30 and 29. As for other regions, Jeju peaks at 26, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 24 and 29. That's all I have for you now, but don't forget to tune in for more updates after midnight.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung, as always. And that will do it for this edition of Primetime News. Thanks for watching.
Good night to those of you in Asia, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.